In the early 1990s, three pediatricians in South Africa started noticing something deeply unsettling. Multiple children from different towns, different families, arrived at clinics with sewing needles embedded deep in their bodies. These were not accidental pricks or superficial scratches, but intentionally inserted needles, lodged deep beneath the skin. When questioned, the children's mothers offered a consistent yet perplexing explanation. They were not responsible. It was something else. The cause, they insisted, was something beyond human culpability, an entity that could not be arrested or named. The doctors suspected abuse, but the families insisted otherwise. Some of the mothers were even praised for bringing the children forward. After all, they were victims too, just like their children. To the doctors, it made no sense. But to those mothers, and to many others in South Africa, it made perfect sense. They believed they knew exactly what was responsible. And that's where our story begins. But to understand it, we need to go back, not just a few years, over a century, to the mountains of Lesotho in the late 1800s. Minnie Martin, the wife of a British official, is walking with her servant and their dog when they hear something near the cowshed. A rustle, a sharp, unnatural sound. The dog freezes, lowers its head, growls. Then something bursts out of the shed and disappears into the bush. Minnie catches a glimpse. Just for a second. It's small, hunched, and somehow wrong. Her servant screams one word, Tokoloshe. Minnie doesn't know what that means. But from the look on her servant's face, it means something terrifying. Steinsrust, South Africa, 1918. An Afrikaans family starts hearing things at night. Furniture creaking, footsteps, low growls, sounds they can't explain. But when they investigate, nothing. Then it escalates. A milk bucket flung across the floor, a kettle shattered without cause. Only one person in the house claims to see it. A blur, small, hairy, laughing. A local witch doctor had recently been arrested. The family believes he sent something back, something they couldn't explain. Fast forward to 1998. Queenstown, Nothemba Bekabu is a respected teacher, a part-time Sangoma. And for those who don't know, a Sangoma or Izangoma is a South African traditional healer called by the ancestors into this sacred role. They might have everyday jobs, teaching, nursing, law, but they also serve their communities as spiritual guides, diviners, and protectors against witchcraft. One night, Nothemba feels a presence in her home. She walks into the lounge, and there they are, 5 of them, small, squat, wide-eyed. They're lounging on her furniture like it's theirs. One of them speaks, in a rasping voice, "We want housing rights." Let's take a breath. Are we dealing with a shared cultural hallucination? A psychological response to trauma? Night terrors? Elaborate stories passed down until they became belief? Maybe. But here's the thing. These people weren't just telling scary stories. They were reporting encounters. Real ones. Desperate. Sometimes terrified. Even the authorities were called in. So who or what did they believe was behind it? Often described as a goblin-like creature whose sole purpose is to cause mischief and hardship, the Tokoloshe is one of South Africa's most feared supernatural beings. It gets blamed for everything, from theft to divorce. Reports appear in the news all the time. Sometimes it's for stealing food. Other times it's tied to serious crimes. The first outsiders to hear about the Tokoloshe were Dutch traders who settled in South Africa during the 1600s. They started noticing something unusual. Women working as nannies and housekeepers would quietly raise their beds several feet above the ground, using bricks, wood, anything they could find. When asked why, the answer was chilling. Sleeping too close to the ground could lead to death in the night. Stories had circulated within families of young women and children dying in their sleep under unexplained circumstances, while others sharing the same space remained unharmed. The cause, they said, was a small supernatural creature, invisible to most, feared by all, the Tokoloshe. It was believed this entity could be summoned to carry out cruel revenge or dark mischief, often by those who felt they had been wronged. The creature, invisible to most, was considered a powerful tool of witchcraft. There are different types of Tokoloshe, but the basic description is consistent: a short, powerful, half-human, half-animal being that feeds off the dark energy created by harassing humans. They are active at night and are almost always small, hairy, goblin-like creatures. Some say they have long ears, maybe even a tail. But the one thing they all have in common is a relationship with a witch. It's often considered the witch's familiar or sidekick. But this isn't Batman and Robin. The Tokoloshe does the dirty work, the things the witch doesn't want to be caught doing. It can also be hired out. If someone pays, the witch sends it. How the Tokoloshe is made is actually debated. Some say the witch finds a freshly buried corpse. They pierce its eyes with hot metal, pour powder into the wounds. A sacred chant would then substantially shrink the cadaver before it reanimated as a Tokoloshe. According to some traditional accounts, a witch or warlock creates a Tokoloshe from a human corpse. They remove the tongue and eyes, shrink the body using a heated iron rod, and then blow a secret powder into the mouth to give it life and obedience. Still others say the Tokoloshe was never human. Maybe it was an animal. Maybe it's made from graveyard soil. Maybe a doll. No one's sure how one is made, because only witches know the exact recipe. However, the Tokoloshe is definitely made by someone practicing dark magic. So not only does it cause evil in the lives of its victims, it's created with evil intentions. And while the Tokoloshe is smart, even capable of making its own decisions, more often than not, it's following someone else's orders. It was also said to possess the ability to become completely invisible to human eyes, achieved by either drinking water or swallowing a small enchanted pebble. Once invisible, the creature would enter the home of its chosen victim through any vulnerable entry point. It would settle in temporarily, waiting for nightfall to begin its torment. When the victim was asleep, the Tokoloshe would scratch at their skin with sharp claws, leaving painful welts and sores prone to infection and severe discomfort. Even more disturbingly, it was believed to whisper into the ears of its victims, manipulating their thoughts, causing them to lose affection for their partners, or even commit violent acts, sometimes against their own family members. But there was a price for using a Tokoloshe. The demon would demand the soul of a loved one from the summoner, to be taken at a time and place of its choosing. For a victim, the only way to stay safe from a Tokoloshe was to raise your sleeping mat off the floor to at least waist height. This made it impossible for the creature to reach you, since they are small and supposedly bad climbers. It was also possible to evict a suspected Tokoloshe by enlisting a holy man who could see and banish the demon from the property. Even today, healthcare professionals and social workers continue to encounter individuals from various communities who insist they've seen or been affected by these supernatural entities. The Tokoloshe has frequently been referenced in court cases, accused of contributing to misfortune and turmoil, including incidents of divorce and even homicide. In the 1950s, a series of brutal killings rocked a secluded rural village in South Africa's northern region. Many of the murders occurred in broad daylight with no witnesses to identify who or what was responsible. It wasn't until weeks later that police apprehended a man who had previously been reported missing. He confessed to the killings but claimed he had not been acting of his own free will. According to his testimony, shortly before he vanished, his wife was acting strangely. She became distant, refused physical contact, and insisted he sleep in a separate room. Suspecting infidelity, he pretended to leave town on a trip, only to sneak back into their home that night. There, he found his wife in bed, smiling and giggling in her sleep, while a small, shadowy figure whispered in her ear. In a rage, he grabbed a kitchen knife and murdered her. But in doing so, he ignored the creature, which leapt onto his back and, he claimed, took control of his body. From that moment forward, he said, the Tokoloshe dictated when he could eat, sleep, and who he would kill next. Invisible to everyone else, it remained perched on his shoulders as he carried out further crimes. In the late 1990s, a priest living in the Zimbabwean city of Bulawayo was approached by a wealthy woman in his congregation who pleaded for help. She believed her neighbor's housekeeper harbored deep hatred toward her and was using dark supernatural forces to cause her harm while she slept. She revealed a series of fresh cuts and scratches along her arms and back, injuries she claimed appeared overnight, inflicted by an invisible force. She also told the priest that objects in her home would move on their own, but only under the cover of darkness. The priest agreed to visit her home alone the following evening, using a key she provided. She moved through the quiet house. He suddenly heard something scurrying behind him. Spinning around, he caught sight of a small, red-eyed figure darting behind a piece of furniture. He yanked it aside and came face to face with a short, fur-covered creature bearing sharp teeth and hissing. Recognizing the clerical robes, the creature lashed out, claws flailing. The priest raised his crucifix and began to recite prayers. The creature snarled and then fled into the night. A few days later, the woman contacted him to say the disturbances had stopped, but she also told him something chilling. Shortly after his visit, her neighbor's housekeeper had fallen gravely ill and died under mysterious circumstances. In 2016, a 13-year-old girl returned to her village in Inyati, Zimbabwe, nearly a week after disappearing. Delirious and malnourished, she claimed she had been kidnapped by residents of a neighboring village and held in a large home with a spacious attic. According to the girl, 4 small, hairy creatures sat perched on the shoulders of the people who had taken her. These beings whispered instructions into the adults' ears, directing them to abduct children from nearby communities and commit horrific acts, including cannibalism. The girl said she saw the creatures consume human flesh and force the adults to do the same. Before police could investigate the claims, word of her story spread. Enraged, a mob of villagers marched to the house and set it ablaze. Everyone inside perished. Whatever truth could have been uncovered died with them. And now, our final Tokoloshe encounter. Miriam's ordeal began like any other evening. She had stayed up late watching television when she sensed something dark and unfamiliar in her home. Feeling uneasy, she approached one of her children and confided that she wasn't feeling well. Then, strange noises began in the ceiling, rustling, shifting, as though something or someone was up there. She grabbed a golf club and cautiously investigated. The ceiling trapdoor was ajar. She attempted to close it, but something pulled back from the other side. Alarmed, she woke her children, asking for help. They heard the movements too. Fearing burglars, she told her children to blow the emergency whistle for the neighborhood watch. When the community arrived, she explained the situation. They opened the ceiling hatch. Nothing. Police were summoned. Again, no signs of forced entry. By 3 a.m., everyone left, unconvinced. Miriam and her children, terrified, kept the lights on. Eventually, they tried to sleep, but the knocking resumed, faint but deliberate. Peeking up, she saw something. A boy, maybe 15 or 16 years old, staring down at her from the ceiling. His skin was pale, and his face partially covered by a dry black mask. He had no tongue and blackened gums. He couldn't speak clearly, yet somehow he cursed at her. Then he asked, in a guttural rasp, "Are you sleeping?" Miriam grabbed the golf club and swung. The figure retreated into the shadows. Her children awoke in panic. Again, the police and neighbors returned. Again, nothing was found. Later that morning, while Miriam sat with her neighbors, her daughter headed toward the kitchen to set up a kettle, and then she suddenly screamed. The creature was back, peeking from the ceiling. Miriam ran towards the open trap door and flung the metal rod, but the creature slipped away again. Her daughter, shaken, fled the home. From 7 a.m. to 10 a.m., the figure kept returning. It appeared when only women were present, vanishing when men entered. Then, a traditional healer arrived. Before entering Miriam's home, he made a request. The police must accompany him. He wanted witnesses, fearing that if he caught something, someone might later accuse him of planting it. The healer brought his own concoctions: moody, ashes, sacred herbs. He climbed into the ceiling and immediately recoiled. "There is filth here," he said. He claimed to have found feces, proof, he said, of the Tokoloshe's presence. But when they asked him to bring it down as evidence, he refused, saying it would follow if disturbed. The healer left a mirror at the doorway, a charm of protection, and promised the house would be watched. But the air was thick with unease. The Tokoloshe, it seemed, was not done yet. A friend, concerned for Miriam's well-being, made her a cup of tea and urged her to rest. Around 1:30 p.m., the noises returned. The trapdoor creaked again. The Tokoloshe was back. That's when a neighbor appeared, soft-spoken, claiming to be guided by ancestral spirits. He said he had been told, by a voice, to help and offered to pray. With permission, he entered the house, knelt in the passage, and began his ritual. He used water, divination bones, and muti inherited from his mother's ancestors. As he prayed, the creature growled from the ceiling. The more he sprinkled water, the louder it growled. The house trembled. Some people ran, but the man remained. He promised to guard Miriam's home, warning that whoever sent the Tokoloshe might try again. He reinforced the protection and stayed until evening. That night, they slept peacefully. The man explained the Tokoloshe had been sent to test her spiritual strength and that the creature had once been a real boy. His tongue had been torn out and he was transformed into a vessel of evil, a zombified messenger of vengeance. And just like that, he was gone. But Miriam would never sleep the same way again. The Tokoloshe isn't just ugly, it's dangerous and petty and vengeful. It's said to strangle victims in their sleep, assault women, terrify children, destroy property, demand food, shelter, and even respect. But where it gets truly unsettling is how they might very well be the scapegoat for actual crimes. A victim of assault might seek help from a sangoma without fear of retaliation from their attacker if they frame the Tokoloshe as the aggressor. It's a protective veil, much like what we saw with the pediatrician cases at the start of this story. There, too, parents invoked the Tokoloshe not to frighten, but perhaps to shield themselves from social and legal fallout while still seeking help for their children. Both of these examples show how a fictional creature can be more than just a scary story. Sometimes it becomes a coping mechanism, a way to describe the indescribable, to explain away fear, pain, even guilt in terms people can grasp. And sometimes It serves a darker purpose, a smokescreen, a myth used to hide real crimes. Some believe it was never a goblin at all, that the Tokoloshe was invented to explain something very real: carbon monoxide poisoning. In traditional huts, families slept close to fires. If the room filled with heavy, oxygen-depleting smoke overnight, some never woke up. The ones who survived? Those who slept higher, off the ground. The legend of the Tokoloshe might have been an early, life-saving myth. But then again, what about the boy in Miriam's ceiling? The figures on Notemba's couch? The phantom tormentor in the Bulawayo house? Not everything adds up. Whether it's a spirit, a warning, or a manifestation of fear, the Tokoloshe remains a mystery. So tonight, when you go to bed, maybe take a look under it. And just maybe, sleep a little higher off the ground.